Hi, my name is Jen Wheeler, and I work at the high school. I'm a special education paraprofessional. I'm actually in my 20th year at Blaine. I work primarily with juniors and seniors and help them to graduate and get them out into the real world. So my dad, Jerry Wolten, was one of the guys that when I introduced myself, people don't know me as Jen Wheeler. They know me as Jerry Ann Wolten's daughter. So I would be somewhere and they would look at me like they know me, and I'd go, I'm Jerry Ann Wolten's daughter, and they would know instantly, oh, Jerry Wolten. My dad has been a pillar of Blaine. My dad worked for Alaska Packers, which is actually Semiahmoo. Many of you are aware that there's the big green water tower over there, and then there's the old buildings that are there. That was actually a cannery, a salmon cannery, and Blaine was based on, their industry was based on fishing. And so my dad was a purchasing agent for Alaska Packers, and brought him back to Blaine. My dad, after Alaska Packers decided to move their offices to Bellevue, and my parents had the opportunity to move, and they decided they wanted to stay here. They wanted to keep their town or their family in a small town. So at that time, my dad no longer worked for Alaska Packers, and he started to work for S&H Auto Parts. He was the manager of that in Ferndale. And then they decided they wanted to own their own business. And so they built the Coast to Coast hardware store right at Peace Portal Drive. And it's currently there used to be a yoga place there, and then a kitchen store. So that's what, if you know where that building is, that was my parents' hardware store. And many of you probably went there as little kids with your own parents. When I was probably 15 or 16, the only jobs I ever had were babysitting jobs, and I remember going to my dad one day and saying, I want a real job. And he's like, are you sure you want a real job? Because that means taxes coming out and a paycheck that's probably not as much as you think, and harder work and more hours. And I said, yeah, I want a real job. And so he said, well, come to work with me at the store. And so in the summer, I worked for my dad at the hardware store. I honestly think I became who I am because of that. I had the opportunity to work side by side with my dad. And the lessons that he taught me, most importantly, that anybody could walk in that door, and don't judge anybody, because it could be a homeless man coming in to buy a tarp for a home, or it could be a celebrity, and we had many come through here going to Canada. And so my dad always said, you need to treat everybody the same and treat them with respect. My dad was a very friendly man. People came to the store just to see my dad, which is kind of funny because men in particular did not want to deal with a teenage girl. They didn't think I knew anything. I couldn't, how could I help them? They would ask for Jerry, and my dad would be hollering. He'd be a couple aisles down. He says, Jenny can help them. You're fine. Let her. She knows what she's doing. I've taught her everything. So it was really cool for me to have that relationship, and for the pride that he had and what he taught me, that I could do anything. So being here down at the dock is really important to me because this is where my dad ate lunch every single day. And he was a man of consistency. He would go to the sub shop. He would either, depending on the day, and the ladies knew when he walked in the door what he was ordering, and he would drive his Toyota Tundra down here. He never owned any other vehicle besides a Toyota. Always drove his truck down here, parked at the pier, would read his paper, and take a nap. And that's what he would do at lunchtime. Fishing was very important to him. He was not a commercial fisherman, but he was a sports fisherman. He worked 6 days a week at the store, but 1 day a week he traveled 4 hours every morning to Fraser River Valley in Canada to fish. And that, to me, is dedication. He is very involved in a lot of activities in Blaine. The Chamber of Commerce started the Skywater Festival, the parade that we have every 4th of July, he was very involved in. One time, he actually rode an elephant for Blaine. Can you believe that? Another thing we used to have was donkey basketball. And again, my dad was very involved in I didn't talk about that, but in sports at Blaine. And he rode the donkey for donkey basketball, and it's just hilarious. Again, tall guy on this little donkey, and his feet barely, almost touching the ground. But he would do anything for that. My dad was actually diagnosed with melanoma. He, again, was in the store, and his doctor came in and just said, Jerry, we need to take a look at he had a spot on his temple, and again was just like, oh, it's no big deal. And he goes, no, I want you to come in. So anyways, he came in. Turned out he did have melanoma. He had 3 spots removed, one on his arm, one on his back, and one on his temple. He didn't have to do any treatment or anything for that. They were able to just take it off topically. So thankfully, that was not a big deal. A little scary to our family, of course, but really we didn't think much of it. But December 16th, 2008, he was officially diagnosed with esophageal cancer. At that time, they were in Blaine and had then gone to Bellingham doctors. Then they sent them down to Virginia Mason in Seattle just for more tests and just to come up with a plan. Unfortunately, by the time that they did diagnose him, he was already in stage 4. There are 4 different stages of cancer, and 4 being the worst. But my dad was a very positive, optimistic man, loved to look at the positive side of things. Negative really bothered him, and so he was like, we're going to beat this. And that was everybody's mantra. We're going to beat this. We're going to do everything it takes. In January, he actually started the chemotherapy where you go and for, all day, and I had taken a personal day and had taken him. I wanted to be a part of that with him and wanted to sit with him and just, be together. And then after, at that, a month or so, I guess, of doing that, then they did what's called a port, which is really cool. They actually, it's kind of graphic, but they basically put a hole in your chest and a tube, and he had chemotherapy pumped through him 24/7. He wore a pack across his chest, and it was a pack full of chemo. He would go in every week. My mom would drive him in, and they would recalibrate, and they would refill the chemotherapy there. But it was very intense, and they felt like they could really just go right to the cancer in the esophagus. Unfortunately for him, he was unable to have surgery. They do have an esophageal cancer surgery, but they did find that he had a tumor right at the top of his stomach and at the base of his esophagus. So they called it esophageal cancer, but he basically had esophageal and stomach cancer. And basically where those two tumors met, they couldn't go in and separate those. And so he was not a candidate for surgery. I understand the surgery is very horrific. The recovery is awful, but it could have saved his life. So they did the next best thing, which is chemotherapy, which is basically like putting poison into your body and killing everything, but it would prolong his life. And he, again, being a very strong, determined, strong-willed man, I honestly I think he missed maybe the first day after the chemotherapy of work, and then the rest of the time he went to work every single day. Again, he was the owner. He had to be there. He had a manager, and then he had just 2 other employees, and so someone had to run the store. So he was there every single day. His manager is a wonderful friend of my family's, and she brought a cot, and he had a cot up in his office, and if he felt like he needed to go lay down, he'd go lay down, which I doubt he did very often, but just powered through and was like, this isn't gonna beat me down. So he did chemotherapy from January until June. In June, they did what's called a PET scan, and they basically put you in this room and they scan you from head to toe, and they can see everything in your body, and they can see if it detects any cancer. At that time, his cancer basically said that it had diminished. It wasn't gone completely. Nobody is cancer-free for 5 years, they say, and then you're in remission. So in June, the PET scan came back clean, and we all celebrated. And he even had a little certificate in the back of the store, and just was so happy. So just like, whew, a relief. So his doctor decided, let's just take a break from the chemo. That's a long time to have that going into your body 24/7. So he basically took the summer off, and he felt good. My dad was given a Lifetime Achievement Award through the school, and for his service to against sports. And so the same day that he was to be given that award down in Mount Vernon, my mom and I again took a personal day, and we went with him, and he was to have another PET scan just to see where we're sitting with the cancer. And you don't get the results back right away, obviously. And so we did the PET scan, we went to lunch, went down to Mount Vernon, he got his award. It was an amazing day. We all felt really good, but just in the back of our minds, and I know it was on my mind. It had to have been on his, of what did that PET scan show? You know, he went almost 3 months without any chemotherapy. And he's a funny one because we could kind of just tell things weren't right again. He would rub his back all the time, and we're just like, what's going on? But he wouldn't say anything. He just didn't want to worry anybody. Unfortunately, we got the results back from the PET scan, and the cancer had returned, and it was everywhere. It was throughout his entire body. That was in September. And they had him go back again. Let's do chemotherapy again. But it was too far. And that was a real wake-up call for our family. And again, but you just have the belief that he's going to beat it. You know, you just don't think it's gonna take him. He got really, really sick, I would say, about 2 weeks before Christmas of 2009. Wasn't eating much, getting really, really thin. And of course we were all nervous, but the doctor was like, let's just, you know, it's okay. Let's just part of it, you know, part of the chemotherapy. Got to the point where he could hardly walk up and down. My parents have an old farmhouse with 2 stories, had a hard time walking up and down the stairs. It's very difficult for him because he's a very, you know, a very proud man, doesn't want the help. It was very hard for my mom because he wouldn't share with her how he was feeling. He didn't want to worry anybody. He didn't want to worry any of us. There were many times that he and I talked. He told me quite a bit of what he was going through. I think just because he knew somebody needed to know, and I wouldn't freak out like maybe my mom would, because that's what wives do. They're very worried and concerned. But he felt like he could come to me, and that's the one thing about my dad, is I could feel like I could go to him about anything. So he felt the same connection. So Christmas Day, 2009, he did not come downstairs. We always go to my parents' house around 1, and we do a nice lunch and open gifts. And he was upstairs, and he just wasn't doing good. But it was a bittersweet day. We would just go upstairs and he never was alone. We would go visit with him, you know, and it just killed him not being able to be down with the grandkids and with the kids and just be a part of that. He loved it. But we would go upstairs and we would spend some time, and the grandkids would come up and sit with Grandpa, and I don't know, it was just kind of interesting. I think he knew something was going on. Again, wasn't willing to submit to anything and to lead on that he was not doing well, but it was just kind of like we all knew this was coming to an end. So we all left and went home, and the next morning, like I said earlier, December 26, 2009, the anniversary is today, actually. My mom decided to call 911. He was not breathing well, woke up in the middle of the night gasping for air. And basically his lungs were just full of cancer and he couldn't breathe. And so she was able to get a hold of my brother, who was on the fire department, and they came and got a hold of me, and I met him in at the hospital, and I think I probably got there about 9 that morning, and he passed away at 11. It was very fast. Just shocking. You go to the hospital and you think you're just gonna get fixed. You don't think you're gonna never come home. Thankfully, my brother was able to come, my sister was able to come up, my other brother was there, so we were all there. Again, there's just a special bond between my dad and I. My siblings they couldn't handle being in the ER, and so my mom and I were in there with my dad. He had signed a DNR, which is do not resuscitate, and so basically he said don't go through drastic measures. You know, if it's my time, it's my time. And so they didn't. They gave him pain medication to calm him, and so he wasn't in pain. But I was able to spend some really good time with my dad, about an hour. My mom sat and sang to him. He cried, I cried. He couldn't talk, sorry. You know, you just realize that you're able to try and tell him everything that you want to tell him, but not scare him, because you don't want to put in his mind that he's dying. But I'm very thankful I was there. I don't have the regret of not being with my dad. I was able to just reassure him and sit with him and talk to him and kiss him and tell him I loved him. And they came at one point and said, we're going to move him upstairs. And so why don't you guys just go get a bite to eat? So we gathered everybody up and we went and actually just sat in the waiting room and just were making phone calls. I mean, your just mind is racing of who I need to call. I have a sister in California, I have a brother in Florida. I mean, we need to get people here. And so then we went up to his room, and just as we walked into his, we were getting ready to walk into his room, the nurse came out and said that he had passed. Just shocked. We were just shocked. We thought for sure he was going upstairs to be hooked up to some pain medicine, and I don't know. I mean, you just hope and pray that they're going to be able to fix him. I think that was the hardest thing, that he died alone. That I know my mom struggles with, I struggle with, but I had that time with him in the ER, and I really feel strongly that I was able to get, you know, so he knew I loved him. I was this little girl. I'll always be this little girl. As far as moving on, you have to move on, because that's just part of life. You have to grow. You have to take these experiences, and you have to do something with it. For me, just my faith is really important, and that's how I was able to move on. I know for my family, that's important. And so everybody has to kind of find what works for them. If we just sit and we're just, you know, a puddle of tears all day, well, what good is that going to do? And so I just try and have a positive outlook on life, and just remember my dad and have those wonderful stories and those memories. One thing that's really important to me is pictures. I love to take pictures. I'm the yearbook advisor, so that's kind of it's fun for me to see life played out in pictures. Some advice I'd give you is take pictures. Don't shy away, because that's really all you have left of a person. Video, this is important. Things like that. Journaling. Tell your story, tell your life, because life is cut short, way too short for many of us. And so to have those memories, to have those pictures to look back on, that's where you're able to put yourself back in that place and laugh about it and have a good time and things like that. And, you know, the silly stories I think of my dad, and my dad always thinking he was right, and I was able to always just kind of get in there and prove him wrong. So for me, just moving on is so important. You got to live life. So I just leave you with that. Just don't let these hard times bring you down. And those who have left us, they wouldn't want that either. So it's important to stay positive, and that's what I've tried to do.